Okay, so whenever I'm demonstrating, if this Zoom is in the way, please let me know, because very often I'm not even aware that it's in the way and I just keep showing stuff and you guys don't get the benefit. I'm just going to turn off this character.
At the corner of my eye, I thought that was Groot.
Kind of looks like him. Let me just turn off these. Okay. So I would start with a simple polygon cone. And the main thing is I want to make sure that it has enough geometry. So I'm going to go to polycone and let's see. That's probably enough. And we're not going to see this inside part, so I'll just give it a few just for if we happen to need them, but I don't think we'll need them. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to recenter the pivot to the bottom. So I'm going to hold down D and then X and snap it to the base. And I think I have a soft selection on. Yeah, I'm going to turn the soft select on so it doesn't mess me up. Then I'm going to hold down X and snap that to the center. Now this is, I think I might need a little bit more geometry. So I'm going to go back to the subdivision height and give it more height. And then I'm going to scale this. And this isn't going to look so much like a horn immediately, but I just need the geometry to give me the shape that I'm looking for. Maybe something like that, just a real tall, skinny cone. And from the front view, so I'm going to put this on its own layer. And of course, I'm going to name that something like RAM, horn, LIR, something like that. I'm also going to name it here. I'll call this horn left underscore geo. Then I'm going to freeze transformations and delete history. Freeze transformations and delete history. And I might have to do that a few times, but so now those are the basic things that I need to have to get done. With it on this layer, I'm going to restrict the layer. And I'm actually getting into rigging on this. Maybe I'll just put it on transparency. So hopefully I'm not getting too far ahead of you guys, but I have to switch from modeling to rigging. And then where it says skeleton, I'm going to say create joints. And I'm going to hold down X and snap to that joint. Actually, I'm just going to use the grid. I'm just going to snap it to the grid. And hopefully this is enough joints. So I'm just holding down X and continuing to snap to, oops, undo that one, to the grid. And I'll put one up here just for good measure. All right, so with that many joints, I'm going to unrestrict the geometry. And I select, you probably need to go to panels, layouts, two panes side by side. I'm going to turn this one into the hypergraph panel, hypergraph hierarchy. So we can see, so just ignore all this stuff. This is the character that I was using for a different class. But right here, you can see the joints and the horn. So I'm going to select all these joints. I'm going to shift select the horn. And then I'm going to go over to skin, bind skin, and I'm going to use options. And I think I'm just going to leave these as default because we're not going to do a lot with them. I'm just say bind skin. Now, if I take these horns, I'm sorry, the joints, and I'm going to hit E and rotate them. Well, it might be easier from the perspective view. So if I rotate these, oops, you can see that I can curve them. And if I'm going to turn off the joints so you can see what the mesh is doing better. So I go into show and then I turn off joints. And now let's say I want to rotate it this way. Maybe I'll rotate it a little bit tighter. So you can rotate it as tightly as you want to, but you have a pretty decent looking ram's horn very quickly. I mean, and you can see that I didn't, if I had added more, actually not even more geometry, I have enough geometry. The problem with these points here is I don't have enough, I didn't rig enough. I didn't have enough points on the rig. So if I added maybe twice as much twice as many joints on the rig, this wouldn't look all ugly like that. It would look smoother like this. So you can either add more joints to the rig, or you can just, I'm gonna say unbind skin. Oops, sorry. I'm not gonna unbind skin. I'm gonna duplicate. So I have the geometry selected. I hit Control D. And then I'm gonna move this, oops, let's see. It's locked. I'm gonna unrestrict these. Say unlock selected. Let's see if I can move it now. Hit W, yeah, now I can move it off. So I can just grab the edge loops like we were doing with the pawn and maybe move those into place a little bit better. Maybe I'll go up a few, like this guy. Pawn needs to come out and up. And maybe the next guy, same thing. So you can start to shape it a little bit better, and you also want to make sure to rotate around in the different views, or rotate around in your perspective view, so you can really get a feel for how it looks from different angles. And maybe this one gets a lot shorter, and this. Maybe this doesn't need to be so pointy either. Maybe I just bring that in. Yeah, so anyways, that's the real simple, quick and dirty way to make a ram's horn. So I would actually move this duplicate to the center. In fact, I'm gonna go back to the front view, and I probably need a head. So if, let's just put this guy. And I'm going to rotate this around and probably scale it because it's too big for his head. Maybe drag it up, drag it out. I'm going to go to the top view and drag it forward so it's more at the front. Maybe I'll rotate it in this angle as well. Let's see, a little bit more, maybe up and back. That's pretty good. All right, so the important thing is I have this in position. Let's say this is a pawn head. And again, we froze the transformations on the original geo, but now we want to freeze transformations on this new one. So modify, freeze transformations. And then the center pivot, we actually want to put it right in the middle. So I'm going to hold down D and X, and I snap it to the middle. And with these frozen, with these transformations frozen, I'm going to hit Control D. So I duplicate it. Now I have a horn 1 and a horn 2. Scale X, I'm going to turn that to -1. And now I have horns on both sides. They're perfectly symmetrical. But I want to freeze the transformations on this horn 2 so this becomes its default position without the scale X being -1. So modify, freeze transformations. So now this guy has horns. I'm going to stop sharing and stop the recording. Let's see.